Hey everyone, welcome to Pastors Unfiltered. Today is a very special episode with a very special guest, Chad Robichaud. He is joining us today and being interviewed by Pastor Morgan, one of the associate pastors on staff at our church. This is going to be a great episode. We encourage you to tune in, listen in, lean in. It's going to be a blast. Hope it blesses you. Have a great day.
Well, welcome to Pastors Unfiltered. If you're confused at the voice behind the microphone right now, you're like, this doesn't sound like Pastor Brandon, and it doesn't sound like Pastor Tony. Well, that's because it's neither of those people. This is Pastor Morgan here with a couple friends today, carrying on Pastors Unfiltered, because both of those guys are out of town right now. Tony is celebrating his 10-year wedding anniversary with Ariel. They're in Orlando, Mickey Mouse fun place. And I don't know where Pastor Brandon is. He's somewhere. He's living life, doing something. But I do have here today one of our other pastors from Venture Church. He started and is now continued to lead faithfully and grown this ministry to be something really cool here at the church. Venture Vets. We have Pastor Michael coming here this morning. Good to see you, bro.
Thanks for having me.
I also just recognized one other thing that I forgot to mention. This is a live audience recorded podcast. So, gentlemen, we are here at Men's Breakfast. Give me a little whoop whoop. Come on now. We got the guys here. We are at Men's Breakfast. If you haven't been a part of a Men's Breakfast before, the second Saturday of every month, we're right here. And the fourth Saturday of every month, we're right here, 8:30 to 10 o'clock. Come join us for Men's Breakfast. Was the food good this morning? Good? Come on now. Thanks, Dave. Shout out Dave, Liam. Come on now. But we're excited. We're going to have some questions from them a little later in this podcast as well. But we're really excited because Venture Vets has an event this evening honoring all of the veterans in the community and from our church. And this is what, Michael, this is what, the third year we've done this?
Third year.
Third year. How many people are coming tonight? How many veterans we got coming tonight?
We've got over 200 registered.
Bro, that's so awesome, man. I'm so pumped for that. But we've got a special guest here with us today. He is former Recon Marine, professional MMA champion. That's kind of fun to say. Champion. He's founder of Mighty Oaks Foundation. It's a faith-based nonprofit serving veterans and first responders. And now he's a writer, author. He's speaking. He's sharing his story of what God's done in his life and how God's using him all around in all sorts of different contexts. Would you guys help me welcome this morning Chad Robichaud?
Thank you. Thanks, man. Thank you.
Chad, it's awesome to have you here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. It started off good with some good food.
Come on now. Anytime you can just chow down on some fried rice in the morning.
I never had fried rice for breakfast. It was
Bro, I don't think I have either. But that's America right there. That's like when you get like some like bacon and all that goodness in some fried rice.
Tortilla.
Dude, come on now. Put a little tapatio on there. It's a good day. It's a good day. Well, it's great to have you here, man. Are you a frequent visitor of the Northwest? I can't remember if I asked you that.
No, I used to come, a few years back I came here. It was like kind of pretty frequent, but I haven't been for several years. I spoke at JBLM, is that right?
Yeah.
Joint Base Lewis McCord. Spoke to some of the special forces units there, and then did a prayer breakfast. But it's been a few years.
Yeah. Is it? I'm sure that you expected to come here and it be colder than it is where you live.
Yeah, but I'm coming from Texas, South Texas right now, where it's supposed to be hot, and actually it's warmer here right now. Yeah, it's pretty surprising.
The Lord provides, right?
I was coming here looking to cool off, and
he packed his heavy coats, and he's wearing shorts and a tank top right now. I'm just kidding. He's not, but maybe he could be. Man, well, it's gonna be a fun day. I know we're really excited for tonight. Michael, tell us a little bit about tonight, man. We got Venture Vet dinner tonight. Tell us a little bit about what that's all about.
Yeah, so this was something we started 3 years ago. We just wanted to do something to honor the vets in the community, not just the vets in this church. And so we came up with the idea to do this dinner We brought in a guest speaker. Like, just made it just a really cool event, a really good meal, and it's just grown every year.
Yeah, dude, it's so cool, man. And remind me, we brought in the general last year, right?
Yeah, so the first year we had Brian Dickinson, and then so if you don't know his story, he summited Everest solo, went snowblind at the top, and descended blind and solo.
Sure, because that's just what you do, right?
Yeah, and he's actually coming back tonight to hang out with us.
Bro, like, I get up out of bed in the morning and make it to the fridge, and I call it a successful start to the day.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's different playing fields to life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then last year we had General Gary Valesky, which was pretty awesome.
That's right, General Valesky, that was great. You and General Valesky tight? You ever hang out and talk?
I know who he is, but I don't think.
I know you have a
I don't think we have ever met in person.
We're going to have to get him on your podcast. You got your own podcast. Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, it's called The Resilient Show. I've actually did podcasting for quite some time now, but it was behind like a syndication with Salem Media. And so we've been planning for years to start The Resilient Show. We just wanted to wait till the audience was the right time for it. And so we started about 8 months ago. Our first guest was Terry Crews, so we had some phenomenal.
That's a good start.
It's a good start, yeah. So we've had some phenomenal guests. We just, we had Sean Ryan on, Jocko. I was talking to some of the guys earlier. I feel like I have access to a lot of incredible people that have really good insights. And I feel like those insights kind of stay in this silo of a circle of people. Mm-hmm. And then I'm a contributor on Fox News, and so when I go on Fox News, or some of these other guys go on Fox News, they give us like 3 minutes, and they're like bringing us on as experts, but we have 3 minutes to educate all the listeners and viewers on this subject. That's just not enough time. And so I just wanted to be able to share what the information I have access to with the public to make them more resilient through being informed, hearing stories of overcoming. So that's who we brought on, and it's been incredible. Like, the audience has grown so fast, and I mean, this week we're doing an episode with Tommy Waller, who's a former Marine Corps Force Recon commander. Now he's the CEO of the Center for Security Policy, and probably the expert in our country on securing the grid and how vulnerable our grid is. And like, literally, if the grid goes down in America, you're talking like 90% of the population would die off in a year in America. And so just talking about how vulnerable our grid is to our adversaries, to policy, and those things, and things that we could do as citizens to speak up for it and to prepare. And so those are the type of episodes we're doing. Last week I had Jocko on, I think the week before, and then last week I interviewed 3 commanders, Ukrainian commanders, who have all been serving on the front line. Yeah. One of them lost half of his unit, and the rest of his unit got captured. So he was a prisoner for five months in the Russian command. Wow. So it's a pretty good time interviewing these guys, and I love the fact that we get to educate people.
Yeah. The educational aspect of that is probably really fun for you to be able to expand on, what you see published from like Fox News, but then to be able to bring more depth to it is probably.
Yeah, it's frustrating for me to see. I think so many Americans are like, this whole disinformation. I think ill-informed is probably worse than disinformation. Like, I think if you're informed, then you can see through the disinformation. You can see through all the stuff that people spread, the lies and stuff. So if we could be informed, then we can handle the disinformation. So I don't think Americans are really well informed, and I've had the privilege. I've been to 60 countries. I mean, I'm still to this day, even though I do ministry, the other side of my life, I do humanitarian rescue operations with former special operations guys. So, I mean, I'm doing humanitarian stuff all over the world. I went to Ukraine 10 times. I did the Afghan evac. So I'm like really exposed to the geopolitical side of the world and how unstable the world is right now. And I just want to be able to share some of those things with people and help inform people. I think,
dude, I watched your, I think you just dropped a bump on your social media about the Grid podcast that's coming out.
Yeah.
I watched like 30 seconds of it. You ever had those moments where like you don't know that you're supposed to be terrified?
Right. Yeah.
And then you watch something, you're like, oh, I didn't even know I needed to worry about that. And now I'm worrying about that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
So thanks for that information, Chad. Thanks for that.
I always say I'm trying not to terrify people, but it's you have to be informed.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's like in boxing, right? The worst punch is the one you don't see coming, and that's the same for life. If you don't know, if you're not informed, you're not going to see it coming.
Totally.
And look at these fires in LA right now. It's horrific what happened, but all those people in LA never thought that would happen to them. They were relying on their government, and unfortunately, governments are untrustworthy. From the governor's office down to the mayor's office, that they allow California to be a tinderbox, man-made drought. They cut the fire budget. The month before, they canceled the fire hydrant testing because of budget cuts. And so everyone's relying on the government. And when this happens, now people are evacuating their homes. And you see, it was horrific. I see this man with his wife and kids running out of their car. And the first thing I see is they have nothing in their hands. They don't have anything. So how are they going to, if somebody's injured, right? How is he going to provide for his family? A bottle of water, cash to be able to get a place to get a meal for his kids and to sleep. Like beyond that moment, if you're not prepared, you're going to be a victim. And so I think educating and informing people, I'm big on preparedness, like having, that guy should have had a go bag in his car. Like I have a go bag in my car, I have it on my person. Like even when I travel, like when I'm on a flight, there's not many places you're going to find me without a tourniquet. Which sounds silly and paranoid, but I've seen so many people bleed out in their life. And so, I don't mean like terrorist attack, a car accident. People bleed out. So, just preparedness is super important. And I don't think people are prepared because they're ill-informed. And like the grid thing, man, if people knew, if people watch an episode, we're going to be going by food. They're going to know where to find water. They're going to know how to filter water. They're going to know how to harvest food or whatever. I would hope that's my goal for that episode.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. It caused me to call my wife right after and say, hey, we need to have a conversation because Chad Robichaud just scared the living bejesus out of me. And I've got some real concerns in life right now. No, but I think what you
it drops
are
on
doing,
Monday, so the whole episode drops on Monday. So
all right, man. I'm watching, and I'm going to be praying the whole time. No, I think it's really cool what you're able to do with that kind of information and make that known to people. I'm excited. I'm already excited to have this conversation. But I want to know for the guys that might not know a lot about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? You're married, right?
Yeah, been married 29 years.
Come on, man. Let's go.
We have a.
Yeah, come on. We can cheer for that. We cheer for healthy marriages.
So we met at 17 and 18 years old, and we have 3 adult children, 28, 27, and 24, all married. And my 2 sons went Marines. One of them went to Afghanistan as well as me. So we both served in the same war. Whoa. And 2 went to Bible college, 5 grandkids. And then 2 years ago, we started over, and we adopted my newborn niece. So I have a 2-year-old baby right in the middle of my grandkids.
Wow.
So, So it's a huge blessing. I was so naive to believe, because we had been empty nesters for 6 years, and my wife were it wasn't even a question. We didn't even talk about it. A lot of things we talk about and pray about, but when my niece got pregnant, and I won't say all the details but it was a bad situation for and we wanted to make sure that the baby was going to be safe. So we said, hey, if you're not going to have the baby, let us, we'll step in. It wasn't even a question. And we thought we were God's put us in a position to be able to do this. We're going to bless this baby and give her life. Wow. How naive, 180 degrees around. It's been more of a blessing to us.
Man.
It's a lot different to be a dad in your late 40s than it is to be in your 20s.
In multiple ways, right?
Yeah, a lot different. You have more patience. The priorities are different. The perspective's different. You don't have to feed them ramen noodles and hot dogs. You can. My older kids are
hey, dude, do you have a camera set up at my house? What do you Did you see that today?
My older kids are you guys are spoiling her. You didn't do anything. I'm no, we couldn't afford to do that stuff for you guys. And I do tell them, no, I loved you guys, but I never loved you guys this much.
Just to be
my
clear,
capacity to love is different. She's it's
awesome.
Amazing. It's been an amazing blessing to us to have her. And we just had her 2-year-old birthday just last week.
That's so awesome. I was just literally talking to somebody about changing diapers. I have a 2.5-year-old boy, and I'm just really excited for the day I don't have to change any more diapers. So how was that? You know, like we had I think my daughter was potty trained at the same time my son was born. And so we reset on changing diapers.
Yeah.
How's changing diapers as like a 40-plus-year-old dad? Is that...
It's funny, my wife's like, I don't think you ever change a diaper with the other three. And now you change them every day. Like, she's like really smart. So I think she's just turned 2 and she's already about potty trained.
Dude.
So, yeah.
See, it's because you got that military background. They're well-trained.
She's
a well-trained kid.
She's, you know, it is, I think I'm big on like, I eat carnivore. I cheated this morning with that amazing rice, but I eat carnivore. I eat like super clean. Pretty much everything I eat is either I kill or catch. And so I'm really clean at what I eat. And she eats that way too. And so like when she was a baby, like I was feeding her bone marrow. Like I shot this buffalo and I had it and this other guy shot a buffalo. So I harvested all the bones and I was feeding her this bone marrow like for like the 2 weeks because I was loving it. And I think she was about 8.5 months old. And like after 2 weeks, like she instantly she didn't start like stepping, she started walking. And so she's only had like raw milk and so she kind of eats like, so I think that's cognitive, like, there's something there where it's like she's just super smart and advanced there. I have a good contrast because my sons, you know, my grandkids, my son's kids are in contrast and she's like ahead of them and everything.
Wow.
So that's because they feed her.
Did you tell them about the bone marrow trick?
Oh yeah, I told them. I said, man, the trick is bone marrow, like buffalo, eating straight buffalo. I mean, she's chewing on a bone.
Do you do a lot of hunting?
I do.
Is that like a big hobby of yours?
I'm one of the 4 ambassadors for Smith & Wesson Firearms and Vortex Optics. So I'm kind of spoiled. I get all the guns I want and optics I want, and they hook up all these hunts for me to go on and to capture content. So I'm like super spoiled to do all that. And you know, talking about where I grew up in South Louisiana, and so I did not grow up as a trophy hunter. Like I didn't know I was poor, but we were like really dirt poor. But it's just like how everybody lived around me, so I didn't even know that. And so most of the stuff that we ate, just like I do now, like was either fishing or hunting. Yeah. And so I was never into like trophy hunting. We were for food hunting. Yeah. And in fact, I was always raised like if you kill it, you eat it. And so when I went in the Marine Corps, all these guys from different parts of the country were like, "Oh, are you a hunter?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hunted my whole life." And they're like, and they're starting about points and scores on deers, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And they're like, "Oh, you're not a hunter?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I am," but I didn't do nothing about any of that stuff. So I grew up like hunting that way, and now I'm going to like these ranches that are like these mutant like deer.
Oh my gosh.
That are like
okay,
bred.
so now it makes me have so like when you're in the bayou hunting, right? Like hunting is what you thought was hunting, but you know context. What was your prize? Like what was your trophy? Like when you were growing up as a young kid hunting? Like did you like kill an alligator or something? Like
oh yeah, like so. My mom's side of the family were all
I'm thinking like
fishermen.
What's the bayou show?
Swamp people. That's
right?
my family. Like that's like literally.
That's your people.
That's my people. Yeah. In fact, I'm really close to the Robertsons. I'm really good friends with Jace Robertson and Uncle Si and I just did 2 hunts together last month.
That's such a flex. You hunt with Uncle Si.
Yeah, we went. Contrary
cool.
to you watching him talk and hearing him, he's not that great of a hunter. He misses a lot.
Okay, but does he
when
drink
you go
a lot?
Duck hunting, he'll like shoot twice and like 14 ducks fall, and he's like I can't believe all you guys missed. Like I like 2 shots and I put them all. Like he claims everything.
Oh my gosh!
So that's why it's fun to go deer hunting with him because he can't.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Does he drink as much sweet tea in real life as
he carries it? He doesn't have the little cup anymore. He has a Yeti, but he carries that gallon with him everywhere he goes. He stayed at my house.
What a legend.
I think 2 weeks ago, and so my wife was making sure he had his tea full for him. But he carries that gallon around with him everywhere he goes. Like that's a real thing.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't drink anything else. He didn't drink water, nothing. He just drinks that tea.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so prized trophy hunting in the bayou.
I mean, for us it was meat. So like a doe or like just a deer. I mean, deer, rabbit, squirrel, and then a lot of catfish. My mom's side of the family are all commercial catfish fishermen. Yeah. So like my first job was working in the fish market because all of like our family would go out fishing, and they bring the fish back to my grandfather, and he had a fish market where he processed the catfish. So my first job was skinning catfish, running trout lines. Like I was probably
You shot the catfish.
no.
Oh.
Catch it. So you do what's called trout lines. So you have like a long line with a bunch of hooks in it. They call it trout lines, but it's not for trout. And so you bait all the lines, and you go out at night, and you just harvest all the fish.
So you can tell, like, I'm obviously not a hunter, right? Like, I just asked if you shot a catfish.
Some of them are big enough to shoot. I mean, you're talking like 300-pound catfish sometimes. So.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like big catfish, yeah.
Do you do the noodling?
No, I think it's like Arkansas or something like that. Like, maybe North Louisiana. But you don't stick your hand down in anything in South Louisiana. You're gonna come up with a nub.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that you like hunt all the time, what's your trophy? Like, what's the thing that you brag about the most?
That buffalo, man. I shot that buffalo last year. That was pretty cool.
Dude.
It was pretty cool because it was we had to. It seems like if you think about hunting a buffalo, I thought like it's gonna be like shooting a cow. Like it's big.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't miss it.
Uncle Si can hit that.
Right? Yeah, you probably shouldn't miss it because it's big and then it's slow. But and these things are like super elusive. Really? And you can't shoot it back in the trees because how do you get it out? This is a 2,500-pound animal. And so we were like stalking it for like 3 days. And then I had this spot that we were going to shoot it, and I had a Smith & Wesson AR M&P 10, which is a 308, and had that vortex scope like dialed to where I had it magnified. Like they had this little lever, like quick lever. Yeah. I had it magnified pretty far out because we were expecting him to come like 300 yards out, and I had a guy on the other side like trying to flush him out, and I had like about 50-yard window to shoot him when he ran across. And could hear stuff breaking, and he ran out like 30 yards in front of me, which sounds like easier, it's closer, right? But no, like he's like running, and so I dialed it back, and I shot him twice behind the shoulder, and he didn't even flinch. He just kept running. He's like, and so now if he gets in the trees, it's a mess to go find this thing, and get him out. And so I adjusted and shot him behind the ear, and he fell, and he tried to get up 2 more times, and 175 grain. Like 308 bullet, this thing's so tough. So I ended up shooting like 5 times, and then his buddy was like trying to fight us after. Yeah, we didn't want to shoot another one, but yeah, it was just really amazing because it was like a lot of work to go get him, to find him, and then when I shot him, like it was real fast paced. It wasn't like just sitting there and shooting. Yeah, shot it. It's pretty fast paced. I think that and I shot some nilgai antelope.
Oh, okay.
And what a nail guy is pretty fun is because there's no predators. There's no predators for them. They're innately like. You
are the predator.
Well, they're from India and they have the Bengal tiger is their predator. So you like see, hear, smell really good. So you have to get on foot and stalk them using wind and stuff like that. And they're very tough. So you have to shoot them like in a certain spot. They're just really tough animals. Yeah. So actually getting out and actually hunting them on foot is pretty fun. So that's awesome. Probably the 2 funnest things that I've.
That's cool, man.
And then one other experience. This goes back to my military side. In the military, I was Force Recon Marine, but I went to JSOC on a Tier 1 Special Operations Unit, and I was an AFO, Advanced Force Operator. So then essentially working undercover. And so one of my covers at this time was I had to go to this area, a very remote area of northern Pakistan on the Afghan-China-Pakistan border, where they thought one of the top 10 bad guys were. Mm-hmm. And so my job was to do the feasibility assessment to see if I could overtly get a rifle in that area and fire it. That was my mission. Just go hunting in this area, overtly going through checkpoints in Pakistan. And so I did an ibex sheep hunt. And went so that's for people that are like prize. That's like a big deal to go do ibex hunt like Pakistan or Iran or something like that. So
you got paid to do that.
Yeah, that was my job. So that was my job to go in this area. I spent by myself, me and this Pakistani guy. Yeah. And it was about 3 weeks up in the mountains.
Wow.
Where the Himalaya, Hindu Kush, and Karakoram mountains meet. It's like the largest mountain ranges in the world. You can't even picture and capture it. It's like so vast. And so my job was to do a feasibility study to go get that rifle through checkpoints, go live in this village, and fire that rifle off, and then come out without getting arrested or captured or whatever. And then if that's a successful feasibility study, then I was able to, in the future, bring some other team members in there to do to not hunt sheep, to hunt somebody.
That's definitely a unique. That is probably the most unique hunting experience that you're gonna get.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I went to the buffalo first, but that was probably my...
Dude, and you're still eating the buffalo marrow. You still got marrow left?
Oh, yeah, so you get the femur bones, like, ripped, and like, just kind of ripped in half.
Wow.
And those bones, you just put some salt on them and throw them on the grill.
Some kids get Vienna sausage, some get buffalo bone marrow, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
It ain't,
Hey, she was
not
walking,
everybody
she
gets
was-
the same thing, you
She was
know?
walking 8.5 months old, and
Some kids just get it better, man.
my 28-year-old is still learning how to walk.
That's amazing. Okay, so you spent some time fighting in the UFC, too. That was a season of your life?
Yeah. Well, I didn't fight in the UFC. I fought in every other big promotion.
Oh, right.
I was signed with Zuffa, the UFC's company, or when they owned Strikeforce. So I was on the contract with them, and I fought in Strikeforce, which UFC owned. It was the second biggest show in the world.
Yeah.
I fought World Series of Fighting. I fought for the main event of Bellator.
Yeah.
Won the Legacy. I won the first Legacy FC.
Yeah.
Or now it's called Legacy Fighting Alliance. I won their first belt. So I did 20 professional fights. It was 18-2.
Come on.
So I had a pretty good run.
Come on, that's awesome, man. Do you miss that season of life at all?
Actually, you know, I always will, 'cause I'm a competitor. So, I have a very competitive spirit and a competitor. So I'll always, every time I watch UFC, I'm like, I'm 49 years old, and I'm like, I crushed that guy. Or then I'll have like I go in the gym, and they got like these 25-year-old guys that are like in our gym, and some of them might be listening here, and they're like, they're professional athletes. All they do is train, like literally for like 6 hours a day. Yeah. They don't do anything else but train. And I have like 20 jobs, and I get to train like 3 days a week now. Yeah. And they're like fighting in UFC and stuff like that, and I go in there and I'm the old guy in the gym, and I beat the crap out of them. Yeah. And I'm like, so I feel like I still got it. And then, but I don't know if I can make it through a camp. But you know, there's this guy Dylan who's an up and comer. He's like really really tough, and he like gets so frustrated. You can't understand how like he trains all day all the time, and he's like beats everyone, and I go in there and take him down every time, and so it's pretty fun. But I still train jiu-jitsu. I started grappling-based martial arts when I was 5 years old. So I've been on the mats for 45 years now.
Wow.
And by the way, like when I drive to the gym, I always say this, like when I drive to the gym to go train jiu-jitsu, I'm still excited. And if you've done a sport or anything for 45 years and you're going and you're still getting excited, you probably picked a pretty good hobby. And I like if I have a bad day, a bad week, like that's kind of because there's a lot of things you could do, like running, swimming, weightlifting, but there's very few things you could do to where you unplug and you're present. And there's two things that have really done that for me, where my mind's not like spinning and thinking of other stuff. Or it's jiu-jitsu and skydiving. You got to be mentally like present in those moments, and because if not, you're gonna get hurt, right? Your buddy's gonna beat you up, or you're gonna die. So you gotta be like you gotta like take your phone, put it away.
Yeah.
You're not connected to anything. Your mind is like present, and there's not many things in life you can do that. So I always like, you know, obviously, I'm a really strong believer, and I think one of the most foundationally important things you can do is you know, have a relationship with Jesus and be grounded spiritually. But I also think, you know, there's a lot of things on top of that you could do to be healthy in your life. And I think everybody should have something, maybe not jiu-jitsu, but something like that, to where you can have a moment, whether it's an hour a week, 2 hours a week, once a day, to where you can find something that could literally unplug your mind and be present in the moment. Because it's like, it's so important. Healed. My wife, for a long time, felt so competitive in our younger years of our marriage with jiu-jitsu, because she's like, felt like she was competing for the time, and she knew how passionate I was about it. But now that she's, you know, we're older, mature, she's a little wiser. She's like, you need to go train, like get out of the house, go train, because like you hadn't trained in a couple of days. You need to go and do that to get you back grounded. So it's super healthy for me. So that's
great.
That's what I love most about jiu-jitsu, and it's not even just the physical aspect of it. It's in 45 years I still hadn't solved the puzzle, so it's very mentally, and intellectually challenging to me. the sport's always changing because it's live. You're not learning, memorizing moves. You're like, it's live. Like you go in there, you do 15 minutes of 20 minutes of train technique, but then it's like the buzzer goes and you slap hands and buck knuckles with your partner. It doesn't matter what color your belt is, like white belt or black belt. That belt, I always say, a belt covers like 2 inches of your butt, and you got to cover the rest. Like it doesn't matter. And the older you get, and the more higher your belt is, the more the other guys want to kill you. The younger guys. So it's like you have like it's.
That's cool.
So it makes the sport evolve, and if you get good at something, you get there, and everyone else is to counter it. So it's kind of intellectually always challenging. So it's very stimulating for me that way. Yeah. And there's a real cool community in it. I think church is like church and men's groups have that similar community. Like you sitting down into the mat and you're sweating and you breathe, just kind of relaxing at the end of class, and now you don't think, unless you think about it, you don't notice, but like you have like a doctor here, an engineer, a pastor, some guy with an ankle bracelet, like everybody's like hanging out, and they have like one thing in common in this moment, and it's like you got these cross-cultural friendships, and it's really cool.
That's really awesome.
I love that environment. And I travel like doing stuff like this. If I'm on the road, and a lot of times I'll call a gym and stop in, and I'll just say who I am. And sometimes people know me, sometimes they don't, but they always open the gym to me, and I go and like literally like at the end of the class, it's like I've known those guys their whole life because we have that common thing through jiu-jitsu. It's a super cool thing to be a part of.
That's cool. That common bond. I know Mike has some questions for you, but really quickly, you touched on your faith and how that's really kind of fueled everything else that you're doing in life right now. I know you're sharing your testimony in depth tonight, but maybe just share a little bit about, how you came to faith and how your faith is motivating you and moving you in places now.
Yeah, I think in my life, I've had many intersections of faith, but there's two like major intersections of faith in my life. I won't share this part tonight, but when I was 14 years old, I had a brother. He was a year older than me, and he was shot and killed. It was a real devastating moment in my life. We were super close, and the little bit I had of a family broke apart, and so I ended up living on my own when I was like 15 years old. I say living on my own. My sister was 20, 21 at the time, so we lived in the same house. But there was a family that I grew up with that was really close to me, and at the time they were living about an hour away. And they took me to church with them. And when I went, like many people in the church, the pastor's up there, he's giving a sermon, and he's like talking to me, everything I went through, and it's just cutting right to my heart. And God was using this pastor, and he did an altar call at the end, and I probably like ran up and made a declaration and surrendered my life to Jesus. That was like 15 years old. Wow. However, I didn't live there, and so there was no community for me to go back to. There was no discipleship. There was just that moment, and without that decision to surrender your life to Christ, without the discipleship, without the community, without what you guys have here, you're gonna fall off. You're going to. I mean, you got everything working against you. This world is in the evil things in this world and the spiritual warfare that we're in, you're going to fall off. And so, it was just a moment for me. And I look back at them, man, if I would have had discipleship after that decision in community and mentorship, through that, my life would have probably been a lot different. And so that was one single moment. It wouldn't be until 20 years later, until 35 years old, and I'm 49 now, but it wouldn't be until 20 years later that I would have that chance to do it over again, and have it done with the discipleship process. So, go in the Marine Corps at 17 years old, go into one of the, funnest jobs, but the most stressful and taxing jobs you could have in special operations, and then getting married at me and Kathy met at 17 and 18. A year later, we were married, starting a family. We went to church because we both came from broken homes, thought it was a healthy thing to do, but I never engaged in a relationship with Jesus. I was probably, the older I got, the more skeptical I got of religion. I would go to I didn't want to be part of a men's group. I didn't feel like I connected with him. There was not any kind of aspiration of to be like the men I saw in church. It was not like, I'm like, they're not like me. I don't want to, there wasn't any kind of it was some pretty tough looking guys in here. The churches I was around, it was any kind of masculine thing to it. So it was very unattractive to me. And so I didn't pursue that. I just kind of went to church on Sundays because when I was home, because, it's a good thing for my family, right? My wife's going to be a faithful and loyal wife. She's going to be a Proverbs 31 woman. My kids are going to go to Sunday school. It's a healthy thing to do, but I was not going to engage in that relationship. And like I said, I was probably a skeptic. I didn't know what I believed. I wouldn't say I was an atheist, but I was probably borderline agnostic. And I wasn't motivated enough to do any digging and searching. Thought that's something maybe I could do when I get older. Right now, I'm focused on my job, my career, being a Recon Marine, and doing all I could do with that. And then, 9/11 happens, and I go over to JSOC task force, and I go to Afghanistan 8 times. And I do a lot of speaking on this topic of resiliency. My show, The Resilience Show. Yeah. The resiliency is kind of broken down into 4 pillars: mind, body, spirit, social. And so am I mentally, do I have the right mindset? Do I have the right perspectives? Am I mentally tough? Physically, am I healthy? Socially, am I surrounded with the right people? And spiritually, what's my spiritual foundation? And so when I went to Afghanistan through those times, I would have said that I would have checked all the boxes, right? But the truth is, if it was a weak part of that, it would have been my faith. Right? I was mentally tough. I had the right perspective. I knew my job well. I was thoroughly screened. In my job, in the whole military, there was only 12 guys, 6 at Delta Force, 6 at SEAL Team 6, in the whole military to do my job. So I was very, screened to do the job that I did. Physically, best shape of my life, working with the best operators in the world. But I had to wear a Christian stamp on my dog tag, but my faith was super shallow, super thin. Like I said, very skeptical. And so over those 8 deployments, you lost 15 people, a lot of hardship. If you heard some of my story, I won't say the location because the Pentagon redacted it, but I was abducted by a foreign intelligence agency. So I was captured and interrogated, and then we had a compromise on operation. It was a very terrible circumstance that led to me coming home, being diagnosed with PTSD, dealing with these debilitating panic attacks, and you wonder I had wondered at a time how could that happen to me? I was so I felt so bulletproof, and so above something like that happening to me, and then in one moment the wheels flew off. Wow. And I was ashamed because I felt like it was, if somebody else that happened to somebody else I worked with, I thought the guy was weak, right? So it happened to me. So I'm that's what everybody else thinks of me, and that's what I think of myself. So I was ashamed and embarrassed, and so to deal with being broken like that, to be trusted, to make it all the way there to where I made it, Marine Corps, infantry, recon, force recon, JSOC, become an AFO, be in this premier operation. Working in countries that we would, non-permissive countries, and doing it as a singleton, meaning working by myself. That's to get there is the Super Bowl for me. And I felt like I failed. So I was really wondered for a long time, how could that have happened? And now looking back, I think it's very easy to identify the lack of preparedness and resiliency. That's why I love this word resiliency that I had in my life at that time. Is a facade. Those chairs you guys are sitting on had 4 legs, right? Each of those legs, the chairs represent a pillar of resiliency: mind, body, spirit, social. If you wasn't sitting in that chair and you set it here, one of those legs could be broken, it could be weak, and that chair would balance and hold up. But if you put weight on it, you sat your big butt in that chair, and one of those legs were weak, whichever one was weak would easily be identified because it would break and you go crashing down. And so to look back in retrospect to my life, like I said, I was physically fit, was mentally tough. Socially, I was with the best people. What was the weak leg? It was my faith. And so my spiritual pillar broke, and that's what led me there. And so recognizing that was a weakness and identifying it is probably one of the areas that led me to choosing to step back in a relationship with Jesus. So I had a suicide attempt in 2010. I'll share more about the details of it tonight. I had a suicide attempt in 2010, and that led me to realizing I needed to get well. And when I went to meet this guy who mentored me, I had this plan of how I was going to fix my life. And I remember him rejecting it, saying and telling me if this plan doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to not let you waste mine. And that when he said that, I had recognized all the things I did to try to get well. I've been on medication. I've been through counseling, VA programs, civilian programs. Went through this year program with Dr. Phil. Like, went through all this stuff. I mean, people at military, VA, charities, they'll do a lot of stuff for veterans when they go through something like that. So there's a lot of opportunity to get well. But all those things, some of those things are good, some of those things are bad. Like, I was making money. I had rebuilt my name through MMA and sports. Again, some of those things are good, some of those things are bad, but none of those things changed my situation. And we have a saying at my foundation now that comes from this: if what you're doing isn't working, then why not try something different?
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
I tried everything through physical therapy, through mental health, through surrounding myself with different peer circles. And again, some of those things were bad, some of those things were good, but none of those things worked. So it's time for me to try something different. And looking at those 4 pillars, I knew all along it was a spiritual pillar. So when this guy, Steve, said, if this thing doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God, I'm not going to waste your time, I'm not going to let you waste mine. I knew I needed to trust him and make a decision to follow that lead. I didn't really even know what it meant. Like, I just said, what do I have to lose? I surrendered my life to Jesus in that moment, and then he discipled me for a period of about a year, much different than the 20 years prior, 15 years old. Yeah. And what I discovered through that process, I'm a pretty analytical guy. That's kind of how my brain works. And sometimes it's kind of a simpleton analytical mind. What I discovered was so profound for me. I had all these bad things that happened to me in my childhood in Afghanistan. I realized through reading the Bible that as bad as those things were, those things didn't lead me to being in a closet with a pistol in my hand trying to take my life. What led me there were the choices that I made in response to those things. And this biblical model that we've been given gave me a blueprint to make better choices. So as simple as that for me, like the realization that life circumstances, as bad as they are, don't lead us to rock bottom. It's the choices we make, right? And people say all the time that life doesn't come with a handbook, but it actually does. We just don't read it, right? It's like Kathy, my wife, buys it IKEA furniture sometimes, and she'll bring it home and ask me to put it together. And I don't read the instructions. I look at the cover of the box. Yeah. And then at the end, there'll be like an extra bag of screws and like 4 extra pieces of wood. And then I'm like, this thing's like, it's like, I'm like, why'd you buy this junk? You should have went to like a Pottery Barn or something like that. You get this cheap stuff and it's not, and she's like, no, you didn't read the instructions, dummy. Like, that's kind of our life. We look at our life and we're like, why is our life such a mess? Life is hard. The world's terrible. And it's like, no, we didn't read the handbook.
That's good.
And so I became very intentional about reading the handbook. Did I still get anxiety, depression, all those things? Of course I did. I've been through some hard things. But the difference this time was that when I dealt with those things, I paused, I stopped, and I went to the manual and said, and what is the decision I need to make now to make a better choice, to end up in a better place? And I became very intentional about that, and it radically changed my life.
That's so good, man. Praise God, man. I love the work that you're doing with Mighty Oaks, and you talk about the word resilience a lot, and I know that a big word in your messaging is that word hope. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thankful for what you're doing for our veteran community and all the things that God's doing through you from your story, man. It's awesome to hear. Mike, did you want to bullet him with a couple questions?
Yeah, I did. I want to hit on the Mighty Oaks a little bit. I remember the day I retired, I went home that night, and I didn't want to take the uniform off. And it was probably the loneliest I ever felt in my life. I'd left my community. My identity was tied to the uniform. My purpose was tied to the mission. And I just didn't know who I was. And it was probably the closest I've ever been to becoming one of the statistics we hear about with the military. I know you struggled also. And we've both seen a lot of our brothers and sisters struggle. So I want to hear some of your thoughts about what veterans are dealing with when they leave the military and what the programming of Mighty Oaks looks like.
Yeah, identity is a very big thing in the military, especially guys. But I think it's a big thing in the community of men. Look, I love the fact that I was in the military, proud of the fact that you were in the military. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your service, being proud to wear a uniform. Where the problem comes in is when your identity becomes tied to your occupation. Because you have no control of getting injured, losing your job, retiring. Like, those things are there's going to be a day that's going to come that you're not going to do that job anymore. So it's okay to be proud of those jobs. It's okay to love your work and be proud of it. You should be. You should be proud of your service. But when your identity is tied to it, it's so dangerous and you're so fragile because, again, one day that's going to be gone, and it could be overnight like it was for me. It could be a planned retirement like it was for you. And when that's taken away from you, you immediately lose a sense of value and purpose because your worth was tied in your identity and not into who you are as a creation of God and foundationally being the man he created you to be, and that occupation being something you just happen to do. Like, for me, like I really struggle with this because now I want to remove myself so far from it. I hate the fact that people like consider me like a veteran, special operations veterans influencer. Like, and I hate that, like, to be grouped in that category because this is just something I did. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a job that I did. I'm thankful I did it, but it's not at all, like, by far who I am. I'm, like, not a very, like, military type guy. My job in the military, if I had to do a traditional job, I probably would have been kicked out or something like that. I don't know. Like, I don't know how it did in a traditional military, but like, it's not who I am. And so many men tie their identity to their occupation, and then when it's taken away or changes, it's catastrophic. And when you look at something like segment out the veteran community, and even like the first responder community, people that had like really great careers, why did the suicide rate amplify on retirement or leaving those jobs? And it has to do with identity and purpose. Like, the biggest things that veterans suffer and deal with in this veteran suicide crisis is not what they've seen or did. It's because of that lack of purpose. Mark Twain has a famous quote that I reference a lot. It says, the two most important days in a person's life are the day that they're born and the day that they find out why. Purpose is at a core, whether you're a believer or not, like, purpose at the core is like, it's wired in us, and we were created to have purpose. And so if our purpose changes radically because it was tied to occupation, it will really throw you in a downward spiral. And I believe it's one of the major causes for veteran suicide, for first responder suicide, and for men who have an occupation change or lose a job or retire. If you look at the timeline in people's lives, I think right now the suicide rate on active duty is like 2 a day. But on the veteran side, the average number they say is 22 a day. We know that number to be wrong. It's probably more like 44 a day. So how do you go from like 2 a day when people are in to 44 a day, or even if it's 22 a day, whatever it is? Because of that shifting.
Yeah.
That loss of purpose. So for us at Mighty Oaks, one of the core things we try to do on our resiliency program and our recovery program is letting these warriors know that your job is important. It's super cool for some people. You're probably never, like, if you had a job like I had, like, once you get out, you're probably never going to be that cool again. Like, I'm never going to get to do anything like that again. To use your taxpayer money to go hunting an ibex in the mountains of it, like, but that's not who I am. It's not. It's just a job that I did.
Yeah.
And so teaching guys that you were created for more, and actually your identity and your purpose lies in Christ, in being the man you created him, that he created you to be, and using your gifts, talents, and skill sets, which change, by the way, through your life as you gain experience and wisdom, to serve him and bring glory to him, and ultimately, I mean, Revelations 4:11 says, people always ask you, what's the purpose of life? What's the reason of life? That's like the age-old question, right? I think it was the Monty Python or whatever. What's the movie?
Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
What's the meaning of life? That's like the big question, right?
Yeah.
And everybody looks perplexed by it, but it actually, Revelation 4:11, it gives our purpose. It's pretty clear, right? For thy pleasure, they are and they were created. We were created simply to please God. That's why we're created. That's why we're here. How do you please God? You use your gifts, skills, talents to glorify him and please him in everything we do. And that's going to change through your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Dude, I hope you heard that message this morning. That was so good.
Yeah.
And so relatable. And I know that's such a relatable, that's so relatable for the veteran community, first responder community. Your identity in Christ and removing that from the title and the profession you have, that's relatable for anybody. And so I just hope you heard that messaging this morning, because that's so profound.
Well, I think so many men, and I've been victim to this my whole life, and even more so as a Christian. Like, I get inspired to do things. I think most men, especially if you're like grounded and you're a solid dude, Like, you're going to be wired to serve, to do things. And so we see something that looks like super attractive for us to do, and we get super focused on it, and we're like, I'm going to accomplish this mission. I'm going to fix this problem. I'm going to solve this thing. I'm going to be part of this cause. And then you want to invite God into your mission and your will. And it should be 180 degrees opposite of that. Yeah. It should be, what is God's will, and how can I step into that? We all want to bring him into our mission. Like, that's why obviously you heard I love jiu-jitsu, but one of the things I hate in ministry is when people take their hobby and they're like, I love jiu-jitsu, so grappling for Jesus, that's the mission, that's the ministry. Like, I'm going to get to grapple for Jesus and minister there, and it's like, don't turn your hobby, like, maybe that works for some people, maybe it's the right thing for some people, maybe that's what they're called to do, but there's a lot of things that I'm passionate about recreationally, there's a lot of things I'm passionate about in ministry. But that might not necessarily be where God called me to be at that time. Yeah. To be honest with you, I lead and founded one of the biggest veterans ministries in the world. You may be surprised to know that that's not my biggest passion in life. Like, my biggest burden in life is not about helping veterans. I really struggle with helping veterans because I think most veterans are very self-entitled. They're difficult to deal with. They don't want help. It's very frustrating helping veterans. And so I don't have a lot of compassion or empathy for it, but it happens to be where God equipped and called me to be. Yeah, and so I do it, and I'm going to do it well.
That's good.
But I struggle with that now. Child sex trafficking, that moves me. I want to go out there and do that. There's a lot of other people out there doing that, and I don't need to go in that space. That's not where God called me to be. So It's not just. I love grappling, man. I'd love to be doing jiu-jitsu for Jesus, but it's not where God called me to be. I have to. So so I really, when God burdens my heart for something, I'll look at, are doors open for that, or doors closed for it. I'll pray, Kathy, with some otherwise counsel, and I'll move forward in that. But it's not always what you want to do most or what seems most attractive to you.
That's good, man. Well, have you guys been enjoying this? Yeah. Awesome. I want to give some guys an opportunity to ask you a question. Maybe we can take two questions. So does anybody have a question? If you have a question, why don't you come over here to the microphone and we can get your question, and I'll give you a second to do that. As we kind of get ready for a couple of those questions, one of the taglines we have here at Venture is "Make Jesus Famous." Yeah. And I love that you found the way that you get to make Jesus famous. And I love what you said. It's like, this might not be the thing that I'm the most passionate about in life, but it's the thing that I feel like that I've been positioned to do. Yeah. To make Jesus known to the world in people's lives. And I love that. I love that. Skip, you got a question here?
I do got a question. Thanks again for coming, Chad.
Absolutely.
So the question that I have is, and it just amazes me, like talking to you guys that have experienced some of the things you've experienced and learning like from you. So the question is, like, you've experienced a bunch of high stress situations. Through those high stress situations, you've learned how to control your emotions, detach a little bit, and make good decisions, and then inspire the people around you to kind of do the same thing. I'd be really interested to know some of the tricks that you've learned to do that, because we don't experience the same level of stress, but we all deal with stress, and it helps us in our family, helps us at work, it helps us with our friendships. Just being able to be the cool head in these stressful situations, I think, is incredibly beneficial for us men. So I'd really be interested for some insight from you.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, because I'm actually working on this question right now for a new message that I'm preparing for this year for 2025, because it's been on my heart a lot. So it's really interesting you ask that question. It's a really dangerous paradox with this, the answer to this. So when you experience trauma, or when you expose yourself to trauma, like, by the way, I'll start off with saying this, like, military service, being like war fighters, like, it's very necessary that we go, guys go around the world and defend people who can't defend themselves, and protect our nation, and good people killing bad guys, like harsh, ugly. and necessary, but as harsh and necessary as it is, we were never created to do that, and we were never created to see that. We were never created to experience the trauma that we create, and so when we do, there's repercussions to it, and when you or like I've seen this a lot when you're operating and the guy's going, breaching a door every day after day in combat, going after high value targets, and you're getting in gunfights. You could see like the empathy and compassion like turn off. I remember when Foster Harrington, I actually have his bracelet right now. Foster Harrington served. We served together for 10 years. We were friends for 10 years. We were at 3 units together. He served in my wedding. He was there when all 3 of my kids were born. And like when he was killed, I remember like just being like, couldn't believe it. Like the breath was taking like out of me. Like I was like, couldn't believe he was gone. Like just the reality of him being killed but that night I had an operation to go on. I couldn't, it's not like here, your friend dies and you take a week off work and you get to grieve. Like, no, I had to go operate that night. My best friend of like 10 years was killed. And so God designed our limbic system in a way to where that emotion could be turned off so that way you could survive. Because if I was grieving Foster at that night on that operation, I would have been in danger to myself and other people. So the more you're exposed to that, the number you get, the less compassion you have, the less empathy you have, and the more actually you're capable of functioning in that environment well. So it's almost necessary to function that way. I remember being in me and this guy, Larry, he's a SEAL Team 6 operator for a long time, very experienced guy. We were like in Pakistan, and we seen this kid that was dying, and we were like, and I won't get in the whole story of it, but after we drove away, we just didn't, it was like flippant about it. And like about 30 minutes later, he looked at me, he's like, man, when did we become so cold? Like that we're not even fazed by that. Like this, if we were back home and this kid was dying, wouldn't be, but like we didn't even care. And it's like, when did we become so cold? And so that turns off. And I think that's in 2025, right? We're in 2025 now. The world has experienced that outside of war. You're probably my age. You probably remember when, I think it was 1984, when the Space Shuttle Challenger crashed. I was in school. I remember they rolled the TV. They had the TV on those. They rolled in class, turned it on for all the kids to see, and everyone went home. And we didn't even have school the next day because it was such a big deal. If the Space Shuttle crashed today, like, we wouldn't even know about it. Like, we're so, and if you did, just be like, you just scroll past. We're just so numb. And so, because we're exposed to so much trauma. And so whether in combat or life, we're exposed to so much stuff, become numb and callous, and we don't have empathy and compassion. And while that keeps us from being hurt, because that's a mechanism to keep us from being hurt, like you go insane if you had compassion over everything we see today, it also creates problems in your relationships. And so this is where I really suffered. Like, and I still do this, like for 3 years after coming home, my wife would be like bawling, crying because of the way I would be to her. And she's crying, and I'm like, I literally don't feel any compassion, any empathy. I don't feel anything for you. Like, what is, either I like don't love her, or I'm just like a monster. Like something's wrong with me. Like, why don't I feel bad that my wife's crying right now? So like that was just turned off. And I have to be careful even now. Like if me and my wife get in a fight or something like that, or she say something that really hurt me, then immediately right back I go back to I could be ice cold. And so I really have to be careful with that. But the Bible talks a lot about taking, I think it's Ezekiel, taking a heart of stone and turning it into a heart of flesh. And there's not a verse, but a song and some things that are come from compiled out of verses. For God to break my heart for what breaks yours, and seeing the world and seeing people through God's eyes, and to be able to be intentional about that, having that compassion, and empathy. I personally, because of the amount of trauma I had in my life and maybe the way I'm built, like I have to be very intentional about not letting myself get callous or cold, because I could turn that on really easy because of the job I had. And so a very long answer to your question.
No, thanks, Chad. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Skip. Yeah. All right, one more question from our good friend.
So I'm Steve. I'm Gustafson. I was just, the last few years, God's brought me a lot of people that are hurting. well, my whole adult life. My dad was a chaplain in the jail. And so I just grew up with people in our home that were always hurting. The person that kind of mentored you and said, listen, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste mine. You got to be right with Jesus. How do you, and then you probably deal with that, and you probably deal with that as well, Mike. How do you turn that compassion off and say, you know what, until you're ready to do that, I'm just not. Because my saying is, I'm ready to help you if you're ready to help yourself. And I have such a hard time with that switch of compassion because I'm just born that way. Not on the other side of the fence of you, where my heart breaks when I see people making bad decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not telling them what they need to hear, then you're not really helping them anyways, right? That's a big difference between enabling and empowering people. Mm-hmm. So enabling could be even worse at times than actually trying to help people.
Probably my fault.
So if I would have been in that conversation and Steve Toth would have been like, he would have pandered to me or let me run him over. Or, I mean, literally, when I met with him, I was going to use him, to be honest with you. Like I had made a decision. I was putting my life back together. I needed to win my wife over. We had been separated for 3 months. And I wanted to win my wife over, let her know I'm serious. So this guy's going to her church. He's an elder at her church. And so I need to manipulate him to believe that I actually want to get better so he could go back and report to her and she'll accept me and sweeping things under the rug, right? So I had wrote a 5-paragraph op order. It was really good, like super good. And how it was going to fix my life. I was super impressed by it. And I thought he was going to be impressed by it. And I slid it over to him and he won't even look at it. And he said, this plan doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to let you waste mine. Had he said, oh, this is amazing, Chad. I could tell you're really serious about this and let me take control of the situation, I probably would have never got well. I likely might have ended up right back where I was and potentially lost my life. I certainly would have lost my family. So I needed that hard truth. And, most people that are struggling, especially men, tend to surround themselves by people that tell them everything they want to hear and not what they need to hear. And we need other men around us that'll tell us what we need to hear.
That's great.
And challenge them. And like I said, if you're enabling people, you're not helping them. And if your heart is to help them, then sometimes it means. Now there's a balance in that, right? You can't be just a harsh jerk and hellfire and brimstone over people.
Yeah.
And there's many strategies to get people to open up and be willing to help. I think one of the best is vulnerability and transparency, right? We always want, when we want to help people, you have a compassionate heart like you do, you're like, let me help you, like sit down, tell me what you're going through. Like, what's your struggle? Share it with me, I'm gonna help you. And oftentimes it's the opposite. Like, if you want someone to be vulnerable and transparent so you could help them, then the best thing to do is demonstrate vulnerability and transparency. Instead of saying, hey, tell me what you're struggling with, like, sit down and have a cup of coffee. Like,
leaning that way.
Let me tell you about a time that I struggled and fell on my face. And you go first. And demonstrate that vulnerability and transparency, and then it maybe more likely for walls to come down and trust you to open up to you. So starting there. That's
great. It's good word, man. Well, man, you bring up such a good conversation, maybe for us to kind of close on. I hope men in here and that are listening to this podcast, and not just men, but everybody, the need for good discipleship is so great. And you touched on something there that I think is it has to be a requirement of good discipleship, and that is vulnerability.
Yeah.
And unless we are willing to sacrifice our pride to be vulnerable with the struggles in our life, we'll never actually talk about the things that God desires to unlock in our hearts. And so I hope, just even as you answer that question, it just made me think, man, just the importance of that. And I hope that those of you who are listening to this, the men in here, I hope you recognize that you're in a place where you can have that kind of discipleship. But again, it comes back to us and our desire of what discipleship really does for us. You can come with your playbook of what you want to happen, or you can submit to God's desire for your life, and that's that you really, truly grow in Him. And so, Chad, I want to thank you again for being with us here today. Can we give it up for Chad? And well, we're going to close out this episode of Pastors Unfiltered. Mike, You're the man, dude. Thank you so much for leading the way here at Venture Vets, with Venture Vets and everything that you're doing, man. Thanks for hopping on. We want to encourage you, if you have negative feedback, to send your negative feedback to tony.m@ourventure.church. And as always, as Pastor Brandon says, let's make Jesus famous. He is the hope of the world. Amen? Thanks, guys, for listening to the podcast, and we'll catch you later.
Raiders roll.